Tottenham Academy graduate, Tottenham player.
About Liverpool needing a centre, right?
Exactly. Let's bring on Stephen Caulker. Stephen, how you doing, mate?
Hi guys, good afternoon. You alright?
Yeah, you know what? No, I'm not all right with the way Spurs are going right now. Rooted into the relegation zone. I mean, can you make any sense out of it?
No, other than the fact that keep changing manager is not a good look. That's my gut instinct. I remember talking to you a couple of months back around the Thomas Frank saga, and I just felt that changing the manager, of course, I know a lot of fans were calling for it. It felt like even the players were looking for that. But I don't know. I just feel when you change a manager, it's really hard to find rhythm and get some momentum going. So, yeah, I feel and share your frustration right now. Things are not looking good.
Yeah, you look at the team right now when you watch them play. Because you look at the individuals, you know, there's some good players there, players who play internationally for big nations, and there are players in other contexts who've been quite good, other managers, other teams. Yeah, as a collective at Tottenham, it's one of the worst teams. I mean, if you look at it statistically, it's not even far away from the Derby team back in 2008. That's how bad we have been. So when you watch them play, and you know, as a former footballer yourself, what do you see on the pitch that is really holding us back? That's really costing us points at the moment and results. What's your analysis of it?
A couple of things. Confidence right now, I think is huge. I think like confidence, momentum is huge in football at every level. So I look at that and I think that's a big factor right now. Clearly, the players are struggling for confidence. The other thing I would say is leadership, because when you are struggling for confidence, that's when you need your leaders inside the dressing room. And you know, as I was just touching on there, people are very quick nowadays to look at the coaches and look at the managers and say this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed. But sometimes it actually needs to come from the players themselves. And I do, when I look at the team, I just think, you know, are they pulling together? Are the senior players there pulling the players in and going, look, let's sit down and have a chat? Because, you know, ultimately, of course, you know, they need to take some accountability, right? And they need to find a way themselves to find their form and so on. And I'm sure Zerbi were doing his very best to help them. But those are the two things that I look at and think are both missing: confidence and leadership. And I just think Zerbi coming in, he's obviously walked into a very difficult situation. I think he's a top coach. I really do. I've loved what he did at Brighton. Didn't see much of what he did at Marseille. But the biggest challenge I think he has is not tactically. I think the biggest challenge he has is giving the players the belief and confidence that they are good enough to compete. Because at the moment, I said they're really falling short in that area.
So how does a manager like Zerbi, with only 7 games now, 6 games to go ahead about doing that? Because it's such a short space of time. You know, you need to pick up wins now. You know, there's no point. We can't build up confidence over 3-4 weeks and let the confidence kick in last game of the season. We need the confidence now. How does the coach go about doing that?
To be really honest, that's my biggest worry. And I've said it quite a few times online, is that is literally my worry. Is like, how does he do it in such a short space of time? Because from the outside looking in, if you look at Zerbi's team, he builds it, you know, over time. He's, you know, when you look at his system and the way he's got a very unique identity, I think it takes like a while to build. And I'm thinking the same as you, he hasn't got the time to do it. So if I was him and if I was, I don't know, someone on the inside, I would be looking at it going, right, first and foremost, can I pull the senior players close? Can I have a conversation with them? That what do they need? What can I give them in order to help the team? I'm talking away from tactics first and foremost. Secondly, then when you are talking about tactics, I'd look at stripping it back and simplifying things, because I think that, so when you are low on confidence, the simpler the tactics, the easier it is as a player to then go and deliver that. And it's a step-by-step process, right? So I'm not saying to play simple football for the rest of his time at Tottenham Hotspur. It's just it's a crisis situation. So those are the two things I'd start with. And then I guess he'd already be doing it himself, where he hasn't got the time to work on the pitch. A lot of the time he would be working in the analysis room right now. So a lot of the times he would be doing walkthroughs, because of course you'd have the sports scientists in his ear saying there's only a certain amount of time you could be on the pitch. So he's going to have to use those other tools. And yeah, listen, at Tottenham, you've got everything, right? You've got absolutely everything. The facilities are amazing. So he'll be using that to get the boys in and get them together. And I think being together is where it starts. You know, can they grind out a result against Brighton? And I mean grind it out, fans included. Can they grind it out, accept where they're at right now, grind out a result against Brighton, and then look to build some momentum?
Obviously, you were at QPR back in, what was it, the 14-15 season when they got relegated. Harry Redknapp was the manager actually at the time. Like, I think at the time people used to say about, that QPR team, I think it spent quite a bit of money, or maybe a lot of players on wages, big wages, older players as well, and you never quite kind of got like any sort of like team cohesion at the time, and maybe there were some players who like didn't care, or allegedly anyway. Like, I'm not going to make any assumptions, but when you think about your time at QPR and that season when they got relegated, do you see any similarities to the situation at Tottenham at the moment with that?
Well, touch on the QPR situation firstly. We felt like we were a team of individuals, despite having, leaders or experienced players in the dressing room, such as, Rio Ferdinand, Richard Dunn, Sean Wright Phillips, loads of experienced players in that dressing room. It felt that there was quite a big divide, Joe Barton in the mix as well. We never quite gelled, and I think, that was a problem. And I want to say something actually. I don't feel like any player never cares. I just don't. I never agree with that. I just don't. I know it could look like it, especially since I've sort of stepped away from the playing side. I look sometimes and I think, I can get the fans' frustration more and more today than I ever could when I was younger and playing. But I feel like the players care, but then players react differently when they're under pressure. Some go into their shell. Others, just lose complete confidence. Others will turn up and fight. And I think when I do look at the similarities from QPR to where Tottenham is today, so I don't feel like they're a team of individuals. I still feel like they are, together. But I do look at a team that go, okay, a lot of those players there are like almost going into their shell. That's what I look at there, and that's why I say again, go back to the leadership. It's like I'm going on and on about it, but it's really the key bit that I think in the successful dressing rooms I've been in. I'm going to use an example of Southampton. Southampton had Jose Fonte there, who was a real leader. He was able to pull the players together, and they had a lot of success there. I think the players in the Tottenham dressing room are arguably better than what was in the Southampton dressing room. I don't know, actually, that was a special year at Southampton, but they're like on par, similar sort of level. But they had that togetherness, and I just think that Spurs are going to have to find that. Of course, I think the players care. Of course, they do. I mean, they're affected by it if Tottenham go down. It's not just a case of they just walk off and go, all right, that's me done. Sorry, guys, I'm out of the club. Again, it may look like from the outside, but actually, no player wants that on their CV. The wages get, cut in half or 40% reductions, etc. So there are consequences, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the players are well aware of that, and just personal pride. You don't get to become a professional football player without having that competitive side to you, that side of you that wants to win everything. So, I mean, they'll be hurting right now and be looking for a solution themselves, because, as I said, it would be a catastrophe for a club like Spurs to be relegated.
And just, as I said, you had Harry Redknapp that season. I think he actually left halfway through that season, if I remember.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about Redknapp coming in now, to save the situation, to replace Frank and even Tudor, as someone who knows the club. Do you think that would have been a smart option, given where Redknapp is right now in his life and stuff? Do you think he could have come in and made the impact that we need?
Personally, no, I don't feel so. That's my gut instinct on that one. No, I mean, I worked with Harry at Spurs when I was a youngster, and I worked with him at QPR. I felt he was on his way out of the game at that point. No disrespect to Harry, of course, he's a legend of the game. He's achieved a lot, but that's my gut instinct on it, was that he was actually heading out of the game when I last worked with him, and I think that was going back over 10 years. And I just think he'd come back into it now, having been out of the Premier League for so long. I don't. I just don't see how that fits. You talk about him knowing the club. Well, the club's changed a lot since then. There's no players that were at Tottenham since then. There's not many staff members at the club.
Not even the
since then.
same stadium. Yeah.
Not in the same stadium. So I feel that, of course, there's that connection with the fans, and that would help, right? Because, as I say, when I say the fans, of course, can play their part, as I know they've been doing that, and I know that they came out in good force. I think it was before the Nottingham
The
Forest game. I
yeah.
think it was, yeah, the Forest game, and obviously that game didn't go well, but the guys tried to do it again. And the reason why I think about that is because I just think of Everton, a couple of years ago when they had Frank Lampard and that at Goodison Park. That was just like crazy watching those games. So I'm hoping that, the players give the fans something to cheer about, and the fans, support the players, both ways. Everyone's gonna have to chip in here. And De Zerbi, as I said, is experienced manager. But he's got very, very little time to work his magic.
Yeah, you talk about leaders being able to pull us through this or pull teams through in bad times. Who are those leaders that are going to do that at Spurs? Because a lot of fans are saying, we have a real lack of leadership at this moment in time. Romero, the captain, he's out for the rest of the season, but even his leadership has been called into question a lot this season. So when you're looking at the squad from the outside looking in, who are those leaders that can pull this team together?
There aren't many. That's what I see when I look at the squad. And someone who is like someone who leads by example would be a Ben Davies. I think he's someone that, he knows the club really well, been there a long time. I
Yeah.
played with him at Swansea, really, really good character. And, so he's a leader. He's someone that can bring the players together. He's certainly part of the senior team. I believe Van der Ven can step up and be arguably more of a leader than he's necessarily showing right now. I feel that he's definitely got that in him. When I look at his style of play, when I look at his presence on the pitch, I think he could be more of a leader. Romero, despite being out injured, can certainly impact that. And I think also Vicario, if you look at the team, I always feel like a keeper can be or should be an important part of the leadership team. I always feel like that's an area of which, normally very dominant characters. So I feel like that would be sort of like the spine of the team, that I would look at. And then I would also say Solanke or Richarlison up front. These are Richarlison's certainly got character. Whenever you watch him, he's someone that wants to fight, right? And it's like, can you now challenge that and bring others in to fight with him? Because as I said, they're going to need everybody, not just to start in 11. They need the players off the bench. They're going to need to really pull together and grind out results. I actually feel like an ugly win would be the best possible result right now. Just like an ugly win where, backs against the wall, players have had to grind it out right until the 95th minute, everyone's on the edge of their seat. But a result like that gives the players that belief. And it's like, that's what I feel the team sort of needs, that togetherness. And I'm hoping that it starts this weekend because as you mentioned, there isn't much time at all.
You also need just a little bit of luck to go your way. Like, we haven't had no luck all season. It feels like refereeing decisions are consistently going against us. A ball flies in off Van der Ven's backside and smashes into the top. It's like when you're down at the bottom, it just feels like everything's going against you, doesn't it?
I swear to you, I thought the exact same thing when I saw the goal go in. It was the first thought in my mind. It's just like, when you're down there, I'm telling you, your luck. Like, we played the bottom of the league here over in Turkey on Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember which day it was now. But they were actually battering us for the first 15, 20 minutes. I say battering us. They were on top, right? We weren't playing well. And we got one chance, goal. We got a second chance, goal. And I literally had the same feeling then where I just thought, you know what, when you're down the bottom, it's just like that. You get punished for half mistakes. And before you know it, you look at the end of the game, for example, we won 3-0, and that's a convincing victory. But actually, we know as coaching staff, we had a little bit of luck on our side. And I think Spurs certainly need that because that goal on the weekend, yeah, it was frustrating. And it's like those little details add up and make a big difference over the course of the season.
And we got the news after that game. Romero is going to be out for the rest of the season. We've heard just before that Kudus is going to be out for the rest of the season. Someone like Romero, who I know a lot of people have their complaints about him, but he has been the captain for this season. I think a lot of the people in the dressing room like him and respect him. Like, for you, how much of a blow is it for Tottenham to be going to be missing him for the last 6 games? I think Zerbi would have wanted him as part of the team as well, and losing his captain in his first game is probably not ideal.
No, he's a huge blow for the team, I feel, because he's someone actually at both ends of the pitch can impact the team. He's often chipped in with important goals. He's obviously a top defender and he's a World Cup winner. And I think he just adds a little bit of reassurance for the team. I don't think he's had his best season. I think that's fair to say. I think everyone would agree with that. But he is a big game player. He's played in big games. He's got experience. And at times like this, you want to call on your leaders. You want to call on players with experience to actually guide you through it. It could be a nerve-wracking start to the game on the weekend, and you need someone on there just to slow it down at times. Sometimes speed it up, but sometimes slow it down. Sometimes, you see Romero sort of go down. He could spend a couple of minutes on the pitch. So, sometimes that just buys the players a little bit of breathing space, kills the opposition momentum, and it's like those little tricks, those little things that it's often done by experienced players, and Romero was one of them. So he was still be an important part of Spurs for the next, remainder of the season. I'm sure of that because the stuff that he'll be doing in the dressing room, stuff that he'll be talking about in the meetings, he will be there and supporting the players through any minor issues that they have because there's always issues that popping up. There's always, so you've got a room full of 25 players, 25 egos. There's always this popping up, that popping up, but it's like having said Romero around there would just help balance that out.
Yeah, and we talked about leaders before, and you're talking about a player who's not playing who can make an impact. And I think there's another one in James Maddison. You see all the videos of him being a big presence behind the scenes, even when he's not playing. And in my opinion, I think he's probably the biggest leader that we got. So we need him in the year, and he's on the training pitch now as well. So maybe he'll be back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and he's another one who's obviously an experienced player, right? So he can certainly impact the team, and having him back is a big boost. Is he available? When's he going to be available?
He's not available. That Sky Sports said today that he won't be back anytime soon, but he's back training with the team.
Okay, well, that'll just give him a boost, just him being out on the pitch, and also he'll feel more part of it. Because so when you're injured, you definitely could feel left out and not part of it. I mean, it's different in Romero's shoes right now because he won't be given the chance to be out of it. I'm very sure Zerbi will be using him at every chance he can to be around the players. But having Maddison back on the actual pitch is a big boost. So maybe that's just, the sign of a little bit of luck changing for Spurs.
Yeah, let's hope so. And it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, the first game under Zerbi against Sunderland didn't go our way and wasn't a great performance, but we brought him in because he's known as this talented manager who plays attractive front-footed football. Some people say that's not what you need in a relegation battle. You need to, as you've been saying, fight. You need a passion, or you need to grind out results. So, how do you think De Zerbi's going to go about these last 6 games, implementing his style of play? Do you think he has to make compromises for you? Like, can he full out try and play his way of football in the situation that we're in, or should he make some compromises in the short term, and then maybe next season, if we do stay up, he can start implementing how he wants to play? Because most people in this situation say playing pretty football ain't going to get you out of it.
Well, I've been following this closely with great interest. One, obviously being a former Spurs player, but also just as a coach, because I've been really curious about how he approaches this myself. Because as I said, he's got a real footballing identity, and that identity takes time to build. I'm almost certain of that. It can't be turned around in the space of 10 days he had before his first game. So I've been following that, and in his interviews, he has spoken about compromising. In other words, he has spoken about he wants the players to play like Ange. He wants to to build something here over time. So I think he's basically telling us that he's going to compromise, and I felt that he did that in the first game. It wasn't total De Zerbi ball. It still had his style. There's a viral clip I'm sure you guys have seen of where they built up from the back, and it was the Richarlison chance.
Yeah.
You could start to see his influence on the team, but he's definitely, in my opinion, making compromises because the team right now, when you're low on confidence, I think the last thing I would want as a centre half is them being told, right, put your foot on the ball and wait till the very last second until they press you. I think when you're low on confidence, you're thinking, I want the ball at the other end of the pitch. I think the fans want the ball at the other end of the pitch. So, it's that kind of energy, I feel, at the moment in time would be quite a big ask. So it's just about finding that balance. But as I said, I'm very, very intrigued to see how he, puts the team out and how he develops things. Obviously now playing at home. Sunderland's a really tough first away game, by the way. Like, they've had an incredible season.
Absolutely.
So I don't think anyone in the Premier League looks at that fixture and go, that's an easy one. Like, that's, what I mean? That's a real tough one. Looking at Brighton at home, you'd go, that's a winnable game. Brighton are, of course, a good team, but Spurs at home against Brighton, I'm going, right, this is where I really want to see what he does. And then obviously following on from that, let's hope that the momentum builds and it, go to Wolves and see from there.
As a player that's been in a dressing room before that has gone down, and you're talking about a lot of fans saying, if we do go down, a lot of players are going to be like, I want out. There's going to be a big fire sale at Spurs. But is that the actual reality in a dressing room like that? Are players speaking about it like that? Or do you think maybe more players will stay than maybe what fans actually believe?
Well, I think the club have a big say in it. So it's not just down to the players. Like, I mean, when I got relegated at Cardiff and I got relegated at QPR, I mean, especially the Cardiff one was like the wages that I were on at the time weren't suitable for the championship. And the club were like, look, we can't afford to pay these wages. We don't want to pay these wages in the championship, which was completely fair. The only club I could sort of remember QPR, I think that the couple of years before I was there, I remember were like paying insane wages in the championship because nobody had a relegation clause. And in that case, every player wanted to stay, that kind of stuff. But then another club I remember was Newcastle. I think when they went down there, like, if you remember, they still had a Premier League squad because they were still paying the wages. But Tottenham, most of the contracts would have been signed with Daniel Levy there, and he's a very shrewd businessman. I'm pretty certain he'd have relegation clauses in their contracts to say it's going to be less money. So I think, yes, some players want to leave, of course. Players went there this season, thinking about Champions League football, and they're now looking at Championship football. So I think some players will want to leave, absolutely. Some players will maybe be on a good contract, even with it being cut into, reduced by us, whatever amount. Some players will think, no, I want to stay here and rebuild with the club. So I think it's more a conversation where obviously the club sit down, they look at what they want to do, and then the players also obviously have their input. But honestly, I don't want to even think about it because I really don't want that for the club.
We got to
really
think about
don't
it. This
want
is reality, though. We're 2 points from the drop. It could be 5 this weekend. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to be a doomsday merchant, but it feels like when you're looking at the whole situation and the form that Spurs are on, the form that everyone around us is on, it feels like it's only going one way. It does.
I know, I know. I'm hoping that Nottingham Forest go down. That's what I'm hoping because I think West Ham are in great ever since they played us.
And
To be honest with
Maresca
you. West
deserves it
Ham.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I just think like as soon as they played West Ham played us, they've been flying since then. They pulled out some really good results. Leeds obviously pulled out an unbelievable result at Old Trafford this week. So I'm looking at it going, Forest is the team to catch, in my opinion. So I'm still hopeful. I'm still very hopeful, actually, and quite positive that Spurs will turn it around. But it's easier said than done, right? It needs to start with a result, and it needs to be this weekend because when you get that result, the pressure goes back on the other team. You see the way you're thinking now. I've been in this situation myself on a couple of occasions. It's like no matter what the player's saying, it's like we just focus on ourselves. We're not looking at the other teams. Everybody's looking at the other teams. Of course they are. Do you think in North London they're not looking at what Man City, Chelsea on the weekend? Of course they are. I mean, everyone's sitting there watching it, going, it's just a standard thing we say in interviews. But let's hope that after this weekend that the other teams are starting to feel the pressure.
I'll tell you what, I was watching that Leeds Man United game on the couch. I wanted the ground to swallow me up watching that game. I couldn't believe it because, I was going into that game, maybe Leeds are the ones that we can catch because they're actually on
Yeah.
the worst form out of the three. And then they go win at Old Trafford playing the football that they do. It's just like whatever can go wrong is going wrong right now.
Yeah,
So we just got to
yeah.
hope for a bit of luck.
I thought the same thing. Honestly, I thought like Leeds could be the one. They've been out of the relegation zone. They've kind of been out of the conversation to a certain extent. Like people, they sort of mention them, but they're just and then it's like I thought maybe, and then no, that looks like they're gonna be okay. So yeah, Nottingham Forest for me are the ones that I mean they've only had the one win under Pereira, which again happened to come against us, but it's one win. So so we win on the weekend against Brighton, things start to turn around.
For you, we've got 6 games left. How many wins do we need to beat the drop? What's your prediction?
So I'd say 3 wins.
We need 3.
3 wins. Yeah, I'd say three
We
wins.
haven't won a game in
4 months.
2026. No, in 14 games without a win. 2 wins in our last 23 games, and we need 3 in our next 6.
I know.
When you put it like that, all of a sudden it seems nearly impossible.
I know. I was actually having the same conversation earlier today, and it's a really valid point. But what I would say is they're now working under a new manager. So and often you see a new manager bounce. It's often what you see.
Not
I
at
think that's what
Tottenham.
Spurs.
Not at Tottenham.
No, Tottenham. I mean, yeah, of late that hasn't seemed to be the case. But I think that, I said putting Sunderland aside as a tough away game, I still believe that this new manager bounce with Zerbi is there. And look, he's no fool either, right? He wouldn't have taken the job if he didn't believe that it was possible to stay in the Premier League. I'm sure of that. I know he's got a long-term contract. I know there was talk about him still staying in the Championship. All of that that you've seen in the media. But I think, again, he doesn't want that on his CV. He clearly believes that the club can stay up and will stay up in the Premier League.
Do you think that was the right move to sack Tudor when we did and bring in Zerbi, with such little time left?
Yeah, I feel it was the right move to sack Igor. I felt that it just didn't go well with him at the club. It was kind of a strange appointment from the outside anyway. Looking in, it felt a strange appointment. Obviously, with no Premier League experience, it just didn't go well. Terrible timing with the fact that he sadly lost his father as well. So I think that kind of probably delayed it another week or so. But tragic. That's the life of a football manager, isn't it? It's like you've got all the stuff going on at work, and then it's your family life as well.
Yeah.
It's like obviously that side of it. But I was pushing for Ryan Mason, a former teammate of mine, still a good friend of mine, and that's what I felt would be a good fit. But it's just, as I said earlier, De Zerbi's a top coach, and I just hope that he can work his magic in a short space of time.
Was he open to it, Ryan?
I'm sure he would have been. I'm sure he would have been. Yeah, I'm sure if the call came, then I'm sure he would have been. He's Spurs through and through. He's
Yeah.
been in the club for so long, and obviously got a good connection there. So yeah, I'm sure he would have been open to it. But De Zerbi's the man. So let's see. We could talk about Redknapp, we could talk about Ryan Mason, but I think we just need to get behind De Zerbi now. And as I said, like start this weekend with a real. I want to see that. I want to see a 1-0 grinded out result, backs against the wall, everyone hugging each other at the end of the game. Full stadium. I think that'll be a really good sign for me that okay, things are turning around.
Yeah.
What's your gut telling you? Are we going to stay up? What's your instinct?
My instinct says yes.
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 Okay.
What does yours say?
I don't want to.
I mean, for me, I've been saying, like, there's no evidence right now to suggest we're staying up. But I just can't envisage us getting relegated. And I can't envisage us playing championship football next. I just can't do it. Everyone's calling me deluded. I'm calling myself deluded, but I'd rather stay deluded. Yesterday, I had kind of cracked after the Leeds result, but like we just have to stay up by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how. Just do it.
Yeah. I think this weekend is the one. Like this weekend,
We say that every weekend, though.
No, but I really like. I mean, like make or break. That's my feeling with it. Like I genuinely feel like this weekend is like make or break. Like I don't want to think about what it would look like if we lose this weekend, because then I think I'd be, when asked on the radio, I'd probably be giving a different opinion. But I think if and when we win this weekend, I think then it'll be okay. Like momentum's changing. And then you look at the fixtures and you go, okay, because I don't look at those fixtures and think that they can't win any. I look at all of them and go, you can win all of them, you could win all 6, but just not the way the team is playing, because I say it looks like a team low on confidence, individually and collectively.
We just need something to go for us to use as a catalyst. I think that's the main thing. If we can get that against Brighton, if we win against Brighton this weekend, I think we'll stay up.
Same.
Yeah. All right, Stephen. So, massive pleasure to have you on the channel today. Do you want to tell people about your YouTube channel that Sim was a guest on a few weeks ago?
Yeah, we had a really good conversation actually about a very similar topic around Spurs and management and whether Thomas Frank's going to be there or not be there. And it's like it wasn't that long ago, but now we're on to the third manager. So left field productions. We're just bringing sort of like left field views and opinions around football, having weekly debates. We've got Rob Watton from Sky Sports on there. He's often on the show presenting with me. We just have these kind of conversations and discussing topics from all the way from academy football to sort of discussing game changes, substitutions, all of that. So I bring the football experience, and Rob brings his experience of presenting. So if any of you want to give it a watch, then Left Field Productions is the name of the show.
Lovely. We'll put a link pinned to the title of the video. But Stephen, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you again before the end of the season, and let's hope we can get a result this weekend.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me. Fingers crossed for this weekend.
Cheers, Stephen.
Cheers, Stephen.
Hey guys.
Being a bit of a positive vibe, Stephen Caulker to the show.
This guy is, from his years in the game, years playing, he watches Spurs and his gut is telling him we're staying up. That's enough for me.
Yeah, that spoke really well. He made me believe again. Let's get deluded all over again.
He wasn't so on board with Harry Redknapp though.
No, he was not.
He's like, I had him as manager, and I don't think so.
But he seems on board with Zerbi though. That's the main thing.
That's the main thing, exactly.